Good evening and welcome to a truly historic gathering today as we celebrate the grand opening of the Kitt Recital Hall.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Todd Sullivan. I'm director of the School of Music here at NAU. To you, welcome to the Gala opening weekend of Kitt Recital Hall and the School of Music rehearsal facility. So many people have played vital roles in making this project come to life. Allow me to introduce a few of them to you. The extremely generous and committed major donors to the Capital Project who are present for today's celebration. Of course, we begin with Mike and Karen Kitt. Please stand so we can say thank you. Namesakes of the Kitt Recital Hall. Near them, Don and Stan Sutherland, who have sponsored the Sutherland Choral Music Rehearsal Room. Please, Don and Stan. Liz Grobesmith, who honors her parents with the Grobesmith Family Choral Music Library. Thank you, Liz. President and Tom Chang, who not only support this evening's performer, but also the green room backstage where he will prepare for tonight's performance. Thank you, Chang. Don and Marina Hales, who have underwritten the Don and Marina Hales Hall of Choral Excellence. Okay, that's something you'll see in the future as we honor the tradition of great choral singing here at NAU. And as of just the last couple of days, we are pleased to announce that Kathy and Joe Ladrigan have underwritten the Kathy and Joe Ladrigan Grand Staircase out front. So could we honor the Ladrigans? Thank you. I also would like to say a word about Kathy because this is her 50th year from her graduation from NAU. And so she's an alum giving back to her alma mater. So thank you very much, Kathy. We have other contributors unable to join us today. I mention in particular President Emerita Clara Lovett, who has underwritten the Clara Lovett North Vestibule. Let's thank Clara if she's watching. R. Carlos Nakai and Pamela Hyde Nakai, who have underwritten the R. Carlos Nakai and Pamela Hyde Nakai Plaza, that beautiful open area on the north side of the facility. Thank you both. All of us are very proud of and absolutely thrilled by these new performance and rehearsal facilities. They not only enrich the learning and artistic experience of the School of Music, but they enhance the cultural life of Northern Arizona University and the city of Flagstaff as well. It is music that has united all of us, the students, the faculty, staff, donors, and community members, in bringing this dream into reality. And it is music that provides the accompaniment for this gala opening weekend. 3 performances over the next 3 days, featuring guest artists, NAU School of Music faculty, and NAU School of Music students. Today, Pianist Jeffrey Swann, the President's Distinguished Artist in Residence, inaugurates Kitt Recital Hall with a musical and artistic expedition called L'Invitation au Voyage. Please join me in welcoming to the stage for the first time in Kitt Recital Hall, Jeffrey Swann.
Good evening. This is really exciting. I'm very excited and honored and proud. I'm proud of NAU. I'm proud of Flagstaff. After all, it is my hometown. I think this is just a beautiful facility, and I think we've been fortunate. There's always a certain amount of luck involved, but I think this is a wonderful place. It's a wonderful place to play, and I hope you'll find it many, many times over the years to be a wonderful place to come and hear great music and applaud the students and faculty and guest artists here at NAU. I have just a very personal note. I'm feeling a part of me very sad. My mother passed away less than 2 years ago. She would have been awfully excited to have been here. So any of you, Gloria Swann, she lived here in Flagstaff. So tonight's program, Invitation au Voyage, is inspired initially by a very famous poem by Baudelaire. And we'll get directly to that poem in one of the pieces on the program. But the idea of music as a means to evoke travel is very interesting. It has a lot to do with the fact that whereas if you write about traveling or look at pictures of travel, of destinations, you get concrete impressions. You get a picture of the Parthenon, or you get a description of the Parthenon. But music can do neither of these things. What music, however, can do is evoke feelings around the exotic or the faraway locations, the objects of the travel. Music is extremely good at suggesting, at evoking. And so its power lies there rather than in direct descriptions. Now, one of the things that we decided to do tonight, a slightly controversial thing, is we're going to be projecting images during the pieces. Some pieces will just have one image. Some pieces will have more than one image. These are not intended to be illustrations of the piece. They're not chronological. In some cases, they don't exactly fit. The idea, though, is that they are other artistic impressions of the same thing that the musician is trying to evoke. Chopin evokes Venice and the Barcarolle in his own way, and Canaletto and Turner, the other painter, evoke it in quite different ways. Different but complementary, let's say. So that's the idea. Also, the idea was to utilize the wonderful technical possibilities in this new hall, which there's, as you can imagine, I have many ideas to do, far more complex and demanding. You don't want for the first concert to have too demanding technical. But anyway, so that's sort of the idea behind it. I think it's also important to realize that travel has taken a completely different concept, place in society over the passage of years. That for the great majority of human history, the overwhelming majority of people didn't travel. Or if they did, it was because their whole tribe invaded some new place, or their whole tribe left because they were kicked out. In other words, had to do with invasions, wars, conquests, like the European conquest of the Americas, etc. That's a kind of travel, and it did indeed inspire a certain kind of art, no question about it, especially the conquest of America. But it was really concentrated not on a common experience, but on sort of an idea, usually of expansionism. The first piece on this program is still, in a way, in this older vein, this older kind of view towards travel. This is in Mozart's famous Turkish march. Turkish music, Turkish things, Turkish fashions, Turkish sounds, Turkish coffee, which, after all, that's how coffee got into European and then our society was by way of Turkey, were really hot in Vienna in the 18th century. And partly because Turkey had been, until recently, a very feared enemy. They got very close to conquering Vienna in 1683. By 100 years later, they were more tame. They were sort of exotic and fearsome, but nevertheless under control, as it were. So in this piece, Mozart evokes all the things which were very characteristic to them of what they consider to be Turkish. Now, a lot of that, besides a certain kind of dance rhythm, is involved in percussive effects. As soon as you say Turkish music in the 18th and early 19th century, you think of cymbals, triangles, and drum. Now, the problem is the piano doesn't have these things. Now, by the way, in Mozart's time and well into the 19th century, including in the end of the 19th century in tours in America, pianists solved that problem. They hooked up to the piano a sort of miniature trap set that you operated with your left foot, and it banged the drum and caused the cymbals to clash and triangle to ring. But Mozart kind of suggested, just to the way he writes for the piano, and I think you'll hear. But I think you'll also hear that by this point, it all has a faintly comic effect. The idea the Turks are a little bit ridiculous to Mozart. This will be very different just a generation later. Beethoven will also use Turkish music in a lot of pieces, the Ruins of Athens, other things. But most famously in the Ninth Symphony. At the Ninth Symphony, there's a whole episode with all the effects with cymbals and bass drum, etc. But there he's evoking a completely new idea, that of universal brotherhood, that the Turks who once had been our enemies are now our brothers. So there's a change in philosophical content. But here it's more sort of amusing, funny, exotic, fashionable, and lots of fun. Did you hear the cymbals? I hope so. Mozart traveled all over Europe as a young boy, but Chopin was less of a traveler. He traveled from, when he was young, he traveled to Poland, through Austria, Germany, into France. And then he pretty much stayed in France except for one ill-fated trip to Spain. He certainly never went to Italy. And yet, in this vision of the barcarolle, Chopin evokes a very, very personal view of Venice. Venice as a dreamy, sensual city. This, like most barcarolles, has the constant rhythm of the gondola. Only once in the piece does the water rhythm ever stop. Most of the piece is sung as if by two people. You'll hear a duet. Two lovers, obviously. It's a very sensual, almost erotic piece, which for Chopin is very unusual. He captures a view of Venice which actually reflects his historical painting. In the painting, let's say, of Bellini and then Giorgione and Titian and Tintoretto, very sensual, warm colors. And also in its later tradition, Venice is the city that inspired Wagner to write Tristan and Isolde, not so much after Chopin wrote this barcarolle. So it has a certain sensual, let's say sexy side to it, dreamy and altogether beautiful. Debussy was also not a traveler. Actually, he went to Italy once for 2 years because he won a big prize to study there, and he used to travel to England for marital reasons, basically to get divorced. Not to put too fine a point on it. Other than that, he went to Spain for like 24 hours, just crossing the border, to see a bullfight. Other than that, he was pretty French. But he was very much, let's say, influenced or interested in evoking faraway places for reasons that had to do with his interest in new sounds and new cultures and newness. In his case, it really was seeking something new. We'll hear that very strongly in the first piece I'm playing, the Pagode, which evokes the Far East, a place that he had never been, of course, but which had just recently been kind of discovered in Europe, the great expositions in Paris, 1878, 1886, 1900. And he began to know this and was fascinated by the image. All of Europe was sort of agog with this new opening to Asia, what they called chinoiserie, which had nothing really to do with China in particular, but which just was an image of Asia, and Asian sounds, and Asian scales, and Asian sonorities, and Asian colors. The second piece is Spain. Spain fascinated Debussy, I think sort of as a voyeur. Spain was mysterious and sexy and dangerous, and he captures all that where he himself is completely different. So the idea of the differentness fascinates him. And in the third of the pieces, we get to the actual title of our program, L'Invitation au Voyage, because this is the one piece which is not inspired by a real place, or by any number of real places. There was a myth, really, of the island of Cythera. Cythera was this island, magical island, where people just had a great time. It was the island of eternal joy and pleasure. As Baudelaire says, La toute de la beauté, luxe, calme et volupté, which I know is translated here, but it's not the same. It's real. And so Debussy here, yes, it's exotic and evokes far away, maybe something like the South Seas. I purposely chose Gauguin as the painter because, in a way, Gauguin embodies this whole idea of looking for the faraway place, which is the magical isle of ideal pleasure. Of the composers that I'm playing today, Liszt is the only one who really was a traveler, and his attitude towards travel was different. He viewed travel in a way very similar to the great German artist and writer and really foundation of Romanticism, Goethe, and also then the great English romantic poet Byron, Lord Byron. Travel was the means by which the artist had experiences, saw the world, and his experiences or her experiences, there were women artists even back then, gave them the stuff out of which their art was made, sometimes very directly, sometimes very indirectly. Liszt called these his years of pilgrimage. All the pieces I'm playing are from the years of pilgrimage, although there's also many other pieces of Liszt which have the same sense of travel as an individual discovery. And I think that's the way we mostly view travel still today. We travel someplace different and new to find things about ourselves. And that's what's really happening here in these Liszt pieces, although not necessarily so obviously in any of these that I'm playing except the second. The first two pieces I'm playing are both from the first year of pilgrimage, which is entirely in Switzerland. This was he spent a couple of years in Switzerland with his lover, mistress, companion, the Comtesse d'Agoult, by whom he had 3 children. And the first place they went from Paris was to Switzerland. They had to leave Paris because she inconveniently had a husband and daughter there. So it's sort of a travel through Switzerland. They were living in Geneva, and it sort of starts and ends in Geneva. And the pieces are inspired by historical places, by landscapes, by poems that are inspired by landscapes, etc. So the two I've chosen, the first, Au bord d'une source, at the edge of a mountain stream, is really just an evocation of the joy of listening to the water of a stream, something which I share fully with Liszt. I could spend all day just sitting by the banks of a mountain stream. Something that, unfortunately, our mountains here don't have too much of. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Go to Wyoming, there they have good ones. And then the second piece, Vallée d'Obermann, is really the quintessential Liszt travel piece, because it's inspired probably by a great valley in the Alps. I mean, we know which valley probably it is, in the area near above Bern, the Bernese Oberland. But it really describes sort of someone looking out over the beautiful landscape and feeling enormous melancholy and doubt. And then there comes this terrible, but at the same time hope. And then there comes a terrible mountain storm, and which of course reflects the storm in the artist's soul. And then at the end, after the storm, of course, comes the light again, and the artist has this fantastic epiphany, revelation of joy and beauty. And then at the very end, there's still a return to the doubt again, which is, I think, very much part of the artistic temperament. The very last piece on the program then goes to a very different kind of Liszt travels. This is now in Naples, in a set, the supplement to the Italian year. Most of the Italian year is inspired by Italian art, like Dante and Petrarch and Michelangelo and Raffaello. But this is inspired really more like picture postcards. There's part in Venice, and this part in Naples. Naples, to Liszt, is sort of what Naples is to me, this incredibly fascinating place full of life and energy and con men. And the second part of the piece I'm going to play, the Tarantella, it's a Neapolitan song, but it's somebody like doing tricks. The pianist does magic tricks, and you always feel like the tricks kind of are a cover-up for somebody taking your money, probably. But I'll pass the hat after the concert. But it captures also the extraordinary joy of Naples, its energy and its joy. So I hope we get some of that.